I think this is my third time having a chance to share with you, and it's a great joy, great blessing to me to do that, and particularly to talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is the process of leading leaders. And if you have your notes, I have in Matthew chapter 20 a passage here. It says, "And hearing this, the 10 became indignant with the two brothers, but Jesus called them to himself, and he said, 'You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men exercise authority over them. It is not this way among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you shall be your slave.' Some for many." And then in Luke it says, "But it is not this way with you, but the one who is the greatest among you must become like the youngest, and the leader like the servant." Now, I found myself at times feeling a little, awkward by the fact that God has called me to be a leader. Because a lot of times when Jesus talks about leaders, he's not really too positive. He's saying, look, if you're going to be a leader, you need to be like a servant. You need to be like the youngest person in the room. It seems like he's against the idea of authority. And so I find myself a little disoriented, but I think we'll understand more as we go along here. But I need to begin, just by taking a moment to orient you a little to my thoughts about leadership before we get in. We're talking about leading leaders. I need to make clear, what am I talking about when I talk about a leader? In your notes, I have a little definition of leadership, very simple definition. It says a leader influences people to accomplish a purpose. That's what a leader does. A leader influences people to accomplish a purpose. I have a little diagram that I like to use here. Let me see if I can. There we go. Get it centered. Okay. So you see this diagram. It starts out at the top. It says a leader, and then it goes down to the I, influences, and then the P, people, to accomplish a purpose. A leader influences people to accomplish a purpose. You see this little diagram right here. Now, what do we call it when the leader just goes directly to the purpose? That is, he doesn't influence other people to accomplish the purpose, but he just goes directly to the purpose. That is, he just does the purpose. At that point, he becomes a doer. He's no longer a leader, he's a doer. Why? Because the leader influences other people to accomplish the purpose. There's of course always the dimension in leadership of example, and we don't want to lose that idea. There should be a willingness in us to do things, but the fact is, if we jump in and do things, we're a doer. We're not really doing our job. When I would hire people, I was a pastor for 20 years of a larger church, and when I would hire people in my church, we would have a time where I would sit down with them and I would pull this diagram out right here. And I would say to them, look, I did not hire you to be a doer. As a matter of fact, I cannot afford to pay you to be a doer, because if you're a doer, all I'm going to get is what you're able to produce. I need you to be a leader. I need you to influence other people. So, for example, I'd hire a worship leader, and I would say to him, now listen, I'm hiring you as the worship leader, but understand this: if I don't ever even see you up in front doing worship, that's not important to me. I'm looking for you. I'm getting maybe somebody has their sound turned off. Thanks. I said, that's not really important to me that I see you up doing worship. What I'm really looking to do is to see you get other people involved in worship. I'm looking for you to organize teams. I'm looking for you to get people rehearsing. I'm looking for you to identify the people that have to be a little bit better than they are right now to get on the team. And then we're setting up the systems to help them get better so that they can be on the team in that way. This is what I'm looking for you to do. I'm not, if you get up every once in a while and lead worship, that's fine, but I'm not really looking for you to do that. The job of being a leader, and sometimes we've come from cultures where this is even looked down upon. But the job of being a leader, it's a real job, has all kinds of activity involved in it, but it's not the same activity as a doer. For example, if I was given the task of digging a ditch that was 30, 40 feet long, I could say, okay, that ditch needs to be dug. I'm God's servant. I'm going to go wherever the Lord wants me to go. I'm going to do it. And so I would jump out there, get out my shovel, and start digging. So now what am I? I'm a doer, right? I'm ready to sweat. I'm ready to give my all for the kingdom of God. I'm doing it, but I'm not being a leader. I'm being a doer. I'm in the ditch digging, but I'm doing it by myself. I'm not. Okay, so if I want to be a leader, it means different things. It means, for example, I have to do recruiting. Have to contact people and see if other people will come and work in the hole and help me with that job. I have to be a scheduler. I have to set up a time for when that work is going to take place. I have to think about what people are going to need when they're there, getting the resources together to make sure that they have shovels and picks and the different things they're going to need to dig the hole. There's a lot of work involved in being a leader, right? That doesn't involve me actually getting in the hole. Some of us have been brought up in an environment where people have looked at that and they've said, "Oh, heck, he never does anything. He's not really, he's not really into it. He's here to tell us what to do." That's the kind of person he is. But a true leader is putting together the resources, the scheduling, the recruitment. He's making sure that when the people show up, there's water there that they can drink while they're working. He's putting together support people so there's a little lunch available at the end when the ditch is finished being dug. And he's setting all of this up. He's a leader, right? Because he's influencing other people to accomplish a purpose. I would say a lot of the kingdom of God's work gets derailed because people do not embrace their call to leadership, but instead jump in the hole and, thinking of everything in terms of, I'm just going to sacrifice myself. I'm just going to give. I'm just going to, pour myself into this. And like I say, there's a time for example. It's not that I'm afraid to get into the hole. It's not that I think I'm better than the hole, that I can't get down there to dig. But there's just this realization that the leader influences other people to accomplish a purpose. And so everything that I do, all the different kinds of leadership I've had as a pastor and the head of different kinds of organizations that I've worked in, including I was the president of Elam Bible Institute in college, a 100-year institution over here in New York for 8 years. All of these different things, I had to learn it's not about me doing things. It's about me inspiring and getting other people involved in doing things. So this is all good, but Jesus adds a new twist to what I'm saying, because Jesus says, I want you to lead without relying on authority. Now, this is an interesting idea, because authority is the right to influence, this is in your notes, based on your position. Authority is the right to influence based on your position. When a person is moving from authority or positional authority, when they're moving in this kind of way, they say things to you like, do it because I pay the bills. They say to you, do it because I'm the boss. They say to you, do it because I'm the head of the family and you need to follow my direction in this situation. They're relying on positional authority, and Jesus just says this is no good. You cannot. This is not where true leadership comes from. And he actually tells us in the scriptures that I just read to us that we should lead as if we have no position at all. He says, you should lead. You're in this room full of people. I want you to lead them as if you were the servant in the room. Here you are, the person bringing in the drinks and bringing in the chairs. And he says, I want you now, you have to influence this group, not with the fact that you have a certain position, but I want you to influence them based in something else. He tells us, as a matter of fact, I should ask myself the question, how would I lead these people if I were the servant in the room? Or how would I lead these people if I were the youngest person here? Think of it that way, right? So here I am, I'm the youngest person in the room. My ministry started at a young age, and for many, many years, I was the youngest person in the room. Now I'm like the oldest person in the room. But for many years, I was the youngest person in the room with many, many different leaders. How do I influence what's happening? How do I influence what's going on? Not rooted in my position, because I have no position. But Jesus says, even when you have position, you have no position. He says, I want you to lead as if you were the youngest person in the room. I want you to lead as if you were the servant in the room. In your notes, I put this line. I said, authority is the right to influence based on my position, but power is my ability to influence apart from authority. So power is my ability to influence apart from any authority that I have. Now, there are basically, not including prayer, okay? I'm not including prayer in this list, but there are basically 10 ways that a person exercises influence in the life of another person. You're all leaders, so you're going to be familiar with these things when I talk about them. Maybe you haven't ever seen it all together, but you're gonna understand. There are basically 10 ways that a person exercises influence in the life of another. Now, remember, it's our responsibility. The leader influences people to accomplish the purpose. It's our responsibility to get these people involved in accomplishing the purpose. 3 of these 10 ways are rooted in authority or position, and Jesus encourages us not to rely on them in our exercising of leadership. So in your notes, these are written down for you. Ways to influence rooted in authority, okay? First is position, rewards, and punishment. Okay, these are, when he says you don't lead as the Gentiles lead, this is what he's talking about. He says, you're not leading out of your position. You're not leading out of giving rewards. You're not leading out of giving. I remember when I was the president of this college and we were working on trying to build up our a number of students, our enrollment in the school. And so I'm in a meeting and I'm talking about, okay, how can we get the students to help us reach other people to come to the school? Seems like a good, a good thing to do. How can we make that happen? How can we get the students to help us to do this? And so the people that I'm with, they're saying to me, well, we need to give the students some kind of incentive. And I'm saying, well, what do you mean? We need to give them, so much off if they get somebody else to come or this kind of thing. And I'm saying to myself, as they're saying this, I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, I don't want to make my influence on the students based on the fact of giving them financial rewards. I don't want to make that the basis for their talent. I said, I want to make the school such an experience, so powerful, so influential, so impacting that they cannot help but want to join my team and help me get people to come to the school. And so, see, there was a different framework there. Some people were thinking, well, we can influence them, but the only way you're going to influence students is through giving them incentives, rewards, or punishments. But no, I think there's another way to influence them. And so what are the other 7 ways? There are 7 other ways that Jesus basically says, these are the ways you should be influencing people. This is how you get, and this is very important as we look at the subject of leading leaders, because these are the tools we need to lead other leaders. And so let's look at them just quickly here, just to mention them. Ways to influence without relying on authority. Okay. First of all, there is vision, the cause. That's one of the ways that we influence people. A worthy cause, a clear picture of the future, the vision. And I've had people that have made tremendous sacrifices. I remember I had a vision for seeing a certain church planted, and I was trying to get a couple to come from another place to go here, and I had nothing to offer them. I told them, I said, look, I think we should see a church in this community. And I said, I'll give you my support personally and this kind of thing, but I have no money. I have no, they were successful someplace else. And when I shared the vision with them and why I thought this community was so strategic and everything else, they left their other position, all their financial security. They left everything to come and help me plant this church. Actually, they were going to be the leaders. I was just going to be a supporter in there, but to help me in that process. So what happened? I influenced them by sharing with them a worthy cause, a vision that they wanted to get on board with. Another way to influence people that we're familiar with is likability. Okay, some of us have that going for us. Some of us don't, unfortunately. But so, some of us have likability. That is, people actually like being with you. They like hearing the things that you're promoting and this kind of thing, and they want to help you. They just like you. Okay, and if you got that going for you, that's a great tool. Another tool is relationship or trust and history. I have certain people that I have influence in their lives. I can get them to do things because I have a built-up relationship with them over a long period of time, expressed an interest. I think about my kids. When my kids were little, I made the decision that I would go to their games. I made the decision that I would pray with them every night when they went to bed, and that I was there, able to be there. And I just invested in years. Now my kids are adult kids. They're, in the ministry, some in business and stuff, but they're doing anything. They come talk to their dad. What do you think, Dad? What's the, this thing? And even though they're over 40 years old in one case, there's still that heart there, that connection. Why? Because of over time, a trust and a history building up there. And then coaching is another way that we influence people, right? You're making a personal investment in a person. I think of one guy that worked with me as a pastor in the on my staff in the church, and he was with me for 7-8 years, and eventually became the pastor of the church after I left. Great guy right there, but I had coached him, and even now, years later, he's in another whole location. Things like, if I contacted him, he would do anything he could do to help me. Why? Because I've invested in him. I made a personal investment in him, and he feels that, and he wants to respond to that. Persuasion is another way that we influence people, right? We're excited about something, and we try to persuade them. So sometimes people will ask me, what's the difference between persuasion and manipulation? And I have a simple definition for myself, and that is this: I persuade you for your good, I manipulate you for my good. Right? If I'm trying to say the things I'm saying to you, but to get something for me, that's manipulation. But if I use all the tools of persuasion, because I'm trying to move you toward the kingdom of God and toward greater purposes for your life and toward the destiny that you have, then to me, that's persuasion. That's not manipulation. Another area is expertise. If you have a certain expertise, that gives you an influence with other people. I remember when I was had just become the president of the school. The school had gone through a few difficult years, and I was coming in, and it was a challenging time. They'd been suffering for a little bit, and so I came in and I did a walkthrough with some of the staff that were in charge of facilities. And I did a walkthrough on the facility. As we're walking around, I said, okay, I want this. We need to fix this. Okay, we need to replace these steps. As we're walking around, I'm pointing out these things. And as I'm pointing these things out, the couple of guys that were working in this area of facilities, I can hear them kind of grumbling and kind of muttering behind me as we're walking around, and I'm pointing out these different areas. And so finally we get into a room, and I look at them and I say, "What is the problem? What's going on?" They looked at me and they said, "Don't you get it? There's nobody here to do this. It's just the two of us." I said, "You don't worry about that." I said, "That's my problem." I said, "Your problem, you just go after things that I tell you to go after." I said, "It's up to me to get the resources to make these things happen. That's what's going to happen." I said, "People are going to come from the north, the south, the east, and the west, and they're going to help us in these different areas." And they didn't believe me. My wife was in the room there with us, and she said one of the nicest things she ever said to me. She or said about me in front of other people. She looked at them and she said, "This is what he does." She said, "This is what he does." Just trust him. This is what he does. And I sent a letter out to 40 of my pastor friends, and I said, come help. And people started coming. Churches started sending teams. All kinds of things began to happen. And by the time that summer was over with, all those guys who had looked at me and said, you don't understand what's going on here, they all at once understood, right? They realized I had an expertise in involving other people and getting people connected to what was happening. And so that gave me an authority, an influence with them. And then last of all, of course, is your example, right? When I have the example of my family, my ministry, I've gone through the testings of life and I'm still standing strong. And when you have that example, that's another way that you influence people. So 7 different ways that we influence people that are not based in position, rewards, or punishment. And Jesus says these are the ways we're to do it. He instructs us to influence without relying on authority. And this is the key to influencing leaders. Now, why is this the key to influencing leaders? Because you have to understand, when you're dealing with leaders, they don't need you. When you're dealing with people who are really leaders, they've got their own, circle. Some people is referred to leading leaders is similar to herding cats. Herding cats. I've heard that expression. Cats, like leaders, have their own agenda. They don't need each other, and they can each get their own food if necessary. They don't need you. They are self-starters, and they don't need to be led. And so leading leaders is a lot like that. They don't need you. Why should they follow you? Why should they help you accomplish this mission that you feel the Lord is speaking to you about? And so trying to move them all in the same direction can be a bit of a challenge. But there's a simple reality, and this is that in all of our organizations, all of our churches, all of our missions organizations, everything that we're involved in, the success of any organization is dependent on how the top leaders inspire and lead the other leaders in the organization. This is a simple reality. If you're at the top of an organization, in many ways, you are the least impacting person to the average person who is interacting with your organization. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Think of a place like Walmart, right? Well, Walmart has some CEO, some executive someplace out in Arkansas, I think. And Walmart is a big store, and all over the United States, they're there. Now, when I walk into a Walmart and I'm searching for something, I need to find a can of hairspray or something, and I walk in, I don't know where to go, and I see somebody on the aisle, and I walk up to them and say, "Hey, could you tell me where the hairspray is?" And they're kind of like, "I don't know, it's somewhere down there," and just kind of grumpy to me. You could have the best executive in the whole world, the top president in the whole world. As far as I'm concerned, when I come away from that experience, Walmart stinks, right? I don't care how fancy the guy is. I don't care how much vision he has. I don't care about that. The thing that makes the thing that has to happen is the people who are in the value zone, and the value zone of your organization is where people are actually touched. The people who are in the value zone, the leaders that are in the value zone, if they don't catch your values, if they don't catch your vision, if they don't catch what your heart is toward the people, then it doesn't matter how much heart you have. It doesn't matter how much passion you have. If you can't influence those leaders, the leaders that are in the value zone, that organization is not going to flourish. Things are not going to happen. Are you with me? Does that make sense to you? Okay, so let me give you the 3 keys that I've discovered when I have a group of leaders in the room with me. The 3 keys, and hopefully we're going to have some time for some Q&A here. I'm sure you've got some thoughts and you probably want to challenge me a little bit, and that's okay. I'm with you. Okay, 3 keys for leading leaders. Okay, 3 keys. This is what my discoveries are. Okay, first one, number 1, to lead leaders, if you're going to lead leaders, you must be trustworthy. You have to have credibility, okay, to lead leaders. Now, when we're talking about credibility, to me, that's composed of 3 factors that I see need to be there. Integrity. You don't you want your leader to be a person of integrity? They tell you something, they're going to do it, right? Integrity. But number 2, competence. I don't want just somebody who is spiritual. I want somebody who's competent, right? If they're going to be leading, I want them to be a competent person. And then the third area is I want them to have the favor of God on them. That is, I want to see some history of success in their lives, right? So if I'm going to lead leaders, these are the 3 things, right? If I'm going to do that, I need to be a trustworthy person, which means I need to have credibility, which means I need to have integrity, competence, and the favor of God on me. This is so important. I remember when I came in as the president of this organization, I was telling you about the school, and there had been some rumors that had been spread about that somehow I had manipulated to get this position. You know, all I did was answer a phone call. The board asked me if I would do it. But there was some maneuver that, you know, maybe I had actually manipulated the whole situation, had done something to hurt the previous leader and all this kind of thing. None of it was true, but this rumor had gotten out there. And a lot of the staff, the people who were currently on staff, they had bought into this idea. So here I am coming in, and they already have an impression about me that I am out to, you know, manipulate and hurt people. And then, of course, on top of it, I'm coming in, the place is in a bit of a financial crisis. I'm going to have to lay off tons of people and everything else. So it was an ugly scene. But the first thing that I did when I came in, one of the apartments on campus, I blocked the apartment, and I took the top 4 or 5 leaders of the school. We went into that room, and I said to them, I said, okay, you've heard rumors about me. You've heard questions about me, all this kind of stuff. I said, now is the time to get it out. I said, we're not leaving this room until we are all in some kind of agreement together. And so we got into the room, and you know, they brought up their rumors they'd heard. I tried to get them to be as honest as they would be. And then I was as honest as I could be to tell what the actual situation was and give them whatever facts I could give them, whatever information. And eventually, after 2-3 days, we walked out of that room, out of this apartment that we were in. We walked out, and they were ready to stand with me as I began to lead the school. I knew I could not lead them as long as they questioned my integrity. I knew they wouldn't be able to get on board with me. Okay. So how does this, what does this look like when I'm talking about leaders must be trustworthy? It means we need to keep promises when we make them. It means we need to follow up. You know, you need to answer your emails. Hey, there's a shock for you. Answer your emails, right? It means that you have to have emotional stability, right? You can't be moody, right? You want to be a person who is integrity, competence, favor. You can't be some person that they come into the office and they're not sure who they're meeting today. Who is going to be there? Is it going to be the Mr. Nice Guy or Attila the Hun? What is what is happening here? And you got to call people back when you owe them phone calls. You got to follow your own rules. I remember we had to set certain parking spaces as guest parking spaces. And I needed to get into the building, and I pulled into the guest parking spot, even though I was like the president of the organization. I pulled into the guest parking spot. My wife is with me. And she says, "What are you doing?" I said, I got to run in. It's raining out. I got to run in. I'm trying to get as clear as I can to the door. I'm only going to go in and come out. It's only going to be a couple minutes. She said, "You can't park here. This is the guest spot." I said, "Honey, I'm just running into the building. What is the thing?" But she understood something, see, that I was not getting. And, that was, if I'm going to make rules, I better follow the rules that I make, right? I have to do that. And so I said, okay. And I pulled out and went back, parked someplace else, ran through the rain to get into the building, right? So that I wouldn't violate what we had agreed on there. And then I think another big thing for this issue of trustworthiness is to admit your mistakes. Many of us think that if we admit our mistakes, that it's going to decrease our credibility. But the truth is, your followers already know you make mistakes. They're just not sure you know that you make mistakes. And so when you admit mistakes, they go, "Oh, okay, this is a credible person here. He's, okay." Otherwise, they think you're going around thinking you make perfect decisions all the time, right? And what's happening? So admitting mistakes, I think, is important. Okay, number 2. To lead leaders, you must eliminate any competition. Now, you would think, we're in the kingdom of God, we're in the church, the competition would not be a problem. But I want you to understand something, that if you have any success in your life, people will struggle with envy. It's not because there's anything wrong with you or anything wrong with what you've done. It's just the human condition, the human condition of men's souls, that when they see success, they compare themselves, and it causes competition and envy to come up. So you might not have done anything wrong. I mean, how can, God blesses us, he helps us. We haven't done anything wrong necessarily, but there is this this envy and competition that's there. I remember when my kids were little, my boys, I used to wrestle with them. And we would wrestle away on the floor. And I come from a very broken family, very messed up family. So I did this because I saw this other guy who was a good example to me of fatherhood, and he used to wrestle with his kids, right? So I thought, okay, well, this must be what you do. And so I, as a new dad, I went there, my two boys, they're, maybe 10, 11. So I'm wrestling with them, and every time we do it, they end up crying and running to their room. And so I'm thinking to myself, what is wrong here? Why are my kids crying and running away when we play like this? And so I got this more mature father, and I said to him, look, I'm wrestling with my kids, but they're, they feel really bad about it. They're crying and they're running away and this kind of thing. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you let them win?" And I said, "I'm supposed to let them win?" I'm wrestling with them, boom, down on the, trying to, stay the dad, bam, down on the ground they go, and the problem was I wasn't letting them win. And what I discovered with leadership is you need to let people win. When you're in a circle with leaders, you need to make sure that you're letting those people win. And I put some different ways down here that you let people win when you're with leaders. Okay, number 1, or in the notes here, is value them. Value them by taking time to find out their gifts. Value them by listening to their goals and aspirations. Respect them. Ask advice. Ask their advice. Showcase their talent. If you have somebody that is in the circle with you, other leaders, make sure if they have a gift, lift their gift up. Speak words of blessing over them. This next one's very important when you're leading leaders. Empower them. I tell the people, my key leaders I work with, I tell them, I said, I'm your partner, not your boss. Don't call me boss. I'm not interested in being your boss. I said, I'm interested in coworkers who will stand with me in big kingdom business and will do a great thing with me. I tell them, I say, your initiative is not threatening to me. I know who I am. I don't have any problem. I would much rather have a horse that I have to pull the reins in than one I have to beat to get moving, right? And I tell them, your initiative is not a problem for me. You take as much initiative as you want. And if we need to modify it, if we need to pull the reins in, I'll talk to you. But I want your initiative, please. And then a third way, see yourself as trusting your future into their hands. And that is when I sit with a group of leaders, I look at it and I say, I know I'm going to pass from the scene. And the future of where this thing goes is really in the hands of these other people. And so I need to focus on those things which impart to them and which strengthen them and which encourage them. I want to empower them. See yourself as in trusting your future into their hands, just as Jesus did with the disciples, right? He knows he's leaving planet Earth, but he's preparing them to lead without him being there. And then finally, invest in them. Invest in them means to share your success secrets and to envision a special future for them. You should talk to your leaders that you're with. If you see some anointing on them or some hand of God on them in some particular gifted way, you should tell them, this is what I see in you. I've had many people over the years say, you saw things in me I could never see in myself. But when you speak to them and you tell them these things, you envision that future for them, it's very powerful. Last little point here, and then we'll just open up for some questions. I hope, I think we got a couple minutes. To lead leaders, you must define the vision and then collaborate. If you're working with leaders, you define the vision. Everybody you get in agreement together on where we're going. What is vision? Vision is the dream of the future God wants, the way things ought to be. So you get together, you say, this is what we're trying to accomplish. You agree on the vision, get that clear. Then you let the methods be flexible as long as the outcomes are consistent with the vision. Let your methods be flexible, right? Because people have different ways they like to do things. They could be right, they could be wrong, I don't know, but it's different from the way I would do it, right? But I have got to let people use their methods. And as long as the outcomes, as long as we where we're going to end up is consistent with the vision we have all agreed on. Now, this line right here, if you have your notes there with you and you can underline it, this is the most important sentence I'm going to give you in the whole thing I've talked about here. See yourself as the spark in the engine, not the steering wheel of the car. Very, very important. You need to meditate on this a little while. See yourself as the spark in the engine, not the steering wheel of the car. Think about that for a second. You're what gives the charge. You're what gives the spark. You're what causes the explosion. But you don't have to hold the steering wheel to steer to make everything happen. You're the spark in the engine. I'm talking about now leading leaders. Be the spark in the engine, not the steering wheel of the car. And then last of all, think team, working as a team. And so these are just some thoughts on this whole idea of leading leaders. And I'll open it up now for any questions people might have.
Anybody have any questions?
I just want to know another question, but comment about them. Like the leader have to recognize the mistakes. It's so important. like people will be following more because they, like you said, they notice like you do make mistake. Then,
But the scary thing for them is they're not sure you notice.
yes, yeah, this is
That's what's very scary, right? So
Mhm.
when you admit you make mistakes, then they go, okay, we can follow this guy because if he makes a mistake, he's going to stop and turn the ship around, right? Some people, they start making a mistake, they just keep going. It doesn't matter what what's happening. They plow right into the wall because they're too proud to admit that they've made a mistake.
It is, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
That also frees those up that you lead to be okay with making mistakes, because if we don't make mistakes, we don't learn. So one of the most powerful ways to learn is through mistakes. And that's just how we as leaders have to handle that. So yeah, that's
some of us learn more than others then, right? I make a lot of mistakes as a leader.
right. Exactly.
Pastor Emmanuel in Tanzania.
Yes, I was touched by your testimony, how you start to be a good daddy to your children, and that was a very good an example as a leader. And I like the part you was trying to be a winner, and the same time you was hating your children. And I learned something there, that there's a time to let your leaders to be winners. So thank you very, very much. We are facing those times many times, and if you don't let them win, we will be wrestling the all years. So thank you so much. This was a great message to me. May God bless you, Mike.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Any other questions?
Yeah. Yes, Brother Jason, I just want to affirm that this session was really powerful and blissful for me. And the 7 principles that Pastor Mike shared is really wonderful and powerful. And I have made the notes. And one thing that really touched me is that leadership is to involve others, not one man show. Is to work together as a team to win and to work together for the glory of God. So thank you so much, Pastor Mike, for sharing such a great session. God bless you.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we're missing out in Christianity is raising up and sending out. That was the model that Jesus presenting us, and somehow in our Christian culture we started gathering and to see how many people we can get together, and it's not about that. It's I know pastors with small churches that's raised up people and send them out that started bigger churches. That's what leadership is all about, is raising up and sending out. And that's why we're not a one-man show.
I don't know that there's really a question, but I would encourage you in the scripture, there's always an emphasis on growth, multiplication, raising up other leaders. And so a good indicator of health is something that multiplies and reproduces. So if you all are healthy and growing, at some point you'll need to split, multiply, reproduce, begin others. And part of that is raising up and leading other leaders. And then if you do that, man, follow these principles that Mike has shared with us today, and realize that even as they are released and being launched into new places of leadership, they will require you to lead them, help encourage them, just as we've learned today. And make sure you don't fall in the trap that Sean was talking about, where they lose confidence because of lack of integrity and character.